The ego is the system that runs your sense of self. It is made out of thought patterns, emotions, and behavioral loops, and the stories that try to hold it all together. Left unchecked, it creates endless existential searching, chronic disconnection, and the persistent sense that something is wrong. The goal of my videos is clarity, to see your identity and its contradictions for what they are, named precisely, to finally understand what it is that we're all running away from. Ego death, or also ego dissolution, is really the process of emotional maturity. So is awakening and deep enlightenment. Why is that the case? Why is it being sold as something very magical or mystical? Well, this is just the lack of understanding that we have in our current society or system. But in fact, you know that somebody who knows himself or knows herself, this person doesn't get easily offended. They don't easily get bothered. They complain less. They are more calm. They behave more stoically. And they seem to have, their shit together. And this is considered as like a healthy human being in one sense. But we also see health as something more like biological and also kind of psychological. But we understand that if somebody gets easily mad, then this person has issues. And these issues always relate to the ego. In fact, every emotion that you have stored within your own body relates to your own ego. Not that all emotions are ego, but usually the ego contains them and captures them and makes it so they are not completely processed. When we are kids, we naturally have this desire to just express ourselves and be free. And we also have the natural impulse to just express our feelings. Now, a lot of ego dissolution will make you behave a bit like a child at first, because you're going to express yourself how you used to express yourself as a kid, when these emotions get liberated and you can, actually say to everyone what it is that you actually want. But just crying like a baby doesn't really feel like very mature. So there's another component here, which is the process of being able to differentiate when an emotion requires an action and when it doesn't. This is really what emotional maturity is about. It's not about not feeling extremely sad or mourning or being angry, but to know how to not act on that anger. Now, on deeper spiritual or ego dissolution processes, the anger completely ceases. Like if you're completely whole as a person and you've processed all of your stuff, you won't feel much anger, much sadness, except maybe if you watch some sad movie or something actually sad happens to you, right? Then emotions are very natural. But having these proportional reactions to things that are very minute often requires you to be very self-obsessed. You think you're such an important character all the time that if something like tiny happens, like you just get cut off in traffic, that this is like a good reason for you to rage now, because what an injustice you have experienced. And through deeper ego dissolution, you shed all of these parts of you that feel like they need to react to any impulse or any like perceived injustice with this extreme overbearing aggression or this need to control other people. But it also goes into the opposite direction. Like emotional maturity is to be able to hold your own ground and say what you need and say what you want. Now, if spiritual awakening and ego dissolution, all of this stuff really is just about emotional maturity, then this also means that it is kind of like the default path that every normal human should follow throughout their life. And the fact that we don't is like we have something missing within society. And this is also quite clear if you look at the state of modern society, right? Like everybody seems unhappy, everybody seems sick, everybody seems full of emotion and full of repressed anger, full of repressed sadness. And in a way, I'm calling 90% of humanity immature. But you certainly know as well how immature people can be. And it often comes also from the boomer generation that doesn't have had the right parents themselves in order to know what it looks like to actually mature into an adult personhood. And this relates to like how easily people are manipulated through their own emotions. And in ideal society where everybody is like completely healthy, like physically and mentally, would be pretty close to an enlightened society. I mean, enlightenment might also include some other, maybe more esoteric aspects that people might not believe in necessarily, but we can just say that emotional maturity and spiritual awakening, or like the resolution of spiritual awakening and emotional maturity, are very, very much interlinked. And if you are on, a more psychological groove and less in a spiritual groove, then you might relate more to this idea. But in another way, it's also kind of offensive, because calling somebody immature is a very good way to offend them, because nobody looks at themselves as immature. Like, whoever has a thought that is so self-reflective and so self-aware of, like, oh yeah, this was very immature behavior of me, it requires a lot of self-awareness to be able to do that. And the self-awareness is part of the ego dissolution that facilitates this level of self-awareness, because then you don't take everything so personally anymore. You have the ability to have something offensive said, maybe, or something happens that you perceive like a great injustice, but instead of this ruining your entire day, you are able to reflect and zoom out of the situation. Zooming out of the situation, looking at your own emotions and your own reactions objectively, and looking at where the other person is coming from objectively, and instead of having to like attack or react to them. And this shows that this metacognition that spirituality really like gives a person is really about zooming out of these personal character narratives, where you are overly focused on your own viewpoint and cannot connect to other people's viewpoints. That's why I have a video called Spirituality is Really Just Metacognition, because it is this ability to zoom out of your own ego. And if you do this often enough, and then you look down to what the ego really is and what it does, then it actually starts to dissolve. And this dissolution I would describe as like clusters of energy, that if you look at them, you can find them, and then you liberate the emotion that was hidden in this cluster. And this cluster is often associated with certain language that you use, certain opinions that you have repeated over your lifetime, and certain belief structures that kind of need to be dismantled by understanding where you are wrong about them. And through this dismantling, you liberate the emotion underneath and dissolve the ego that was attached to this kind of cluster. I facilitate this work professionally in my ego architecture audit, which you can check in my link in the description. There is a certain level to this metacognition where all of it kind of falls back into itself. This means that this necessity to like zoom out and look at your reactions like from above starts to kind of cease, because this meta perspective starts to become like your new standard. Like, you always operate from this level of awareness. And from there, you might then look at yourself as somebody who has awakened, or somebody who realized its true nature. And this often comes when you collapse the duality between some like higher level of awareness and your ego structures, because they start to become one. Like, you cannot not see them anymore. You don't need to zoom out and get like a clear perspective on what is going on, because you already are the perspective. you already know exactly what is going on at all times. This is also where the idea of omniscience comes into play, or this feeling that you know everything, which is going to be the video that I've planned for tomorrow. So subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. I think, I don't have the statistics right now, but I think like 70% of concurrent viewers aren't subscribed. I've heard it helps a lot to mention that. I never do, but here you go. There's something to be said about the dangers of doing this all the time, because what tends to happen is that people then start to become overly obsessed over, if they're aware of their own emotions, like if they have the metacognition in order to dissolve their own ego. And it's almost like people become too self-aware. And then this too self-awareness is often like a consequence of insecurity, actually. Because all of the mechanisms that I just talked about are part of emotional maturity, and is what make you mature as a person, and be able to react how you really want to. But if you are obsessive about all of this, then it's actually rooted in some deep insecurity because you believe that your behavior is like not good enough, like either not enlightened enough, not socially adjusted enough, not awakened enough, not compassionate enough. Then you still kind of look at your emotions as something to get rid of. You believe you have some like big metacognition or some like deep understanding of yourself because you can always look at it with like an objective viewpoint. But if you are always hyper focused on these things and you don't feel like you are just expressing yourself freely, then you have kind of entered like a meta layer of your own ego where you are doing all of the stuff that I just talked about in order to be perceived in a way that is emotionally mature. You want to be looked at as somebody intelligent and therefore have all of these characteristics that I just explained. And then through this, you have your own new little ego bubble that probably can get attacked and get triggered and get emotional reactions out of you. And yeah, there's a lot of paradoxical nuance and intricacies in how the mind reforms new identity structures through all of this. That's why it's not like an one and done thing. Like you might be very emotionally mature in one situation, but then very immature in another situation. And to be able to not think about one, like let's say, indecent decision of you, and then not take this as like a judgment over your whole character is very important here to do. And it's also what society is very bad at doing. We judge other people very quickly if they have done one thing in their past that we don't seem appropriate. And it also kind of protects us from other people's judgments because we don't want to associate with people who have done something evil or something that our group doesn't approve of. So there's always this layer of that kind of corrupts this entire process where you don't become more aware of your own emotions and reactions because you want to be more in contact with truth and gain deeper understanding of yourself, but you're subtly doing this for social skills and to manipulate other people better and have like a better perception in the eyes of others. And in some ways, this is always a byproduct of this psychological work. Like you will always gain a deeper understanding of other people while gaining a deeper understanding of your own ego. And if your own sense of ego reactions dissolve, then it becomes very clear when you talk to another person how the other person is kind of trying to manage your emotions and they're trying to kind of control what you're feeling, while from your perspective, this control is completely unnecessary because you're just kind of chilling. Or what can also happen is that they are trying to kind of connect with you in ways that feel very superficial. And a lot of people do this, where they might try to give you a compliment or they might try to say something kind to you, but it doesn't really land because their kindness doesn't read as kindness to you. And this usually happens because people are projecting their own unprocessed emotions, like their own ego clusters of emotional immaturity onto you. And in order to prevent you feeling this way, they already try to kind of manage your reaction to what they just said. And people do this all the time. You can see how much of our communication is managing other people. And that is like certain pretty trite phrases that we say time and time again. That's just kind of like a managing thing. But if you are truly comfortable in your own skin and you are comfortable in your own emotions and you don't quickly react to everything that you're feeling, but you still know when to react to a feeling. Like you know when it's time to get angry because somebody crossed your boundaries without escalating it too much, or you know when it's time to cry because you feel sad. Then all of this is part of what brings you to deeper and deeper awakenings. Because at the end of the day, the real connection with yourself and with reality comes through the understanding and acceptance that you have of yourself. And all of this meta point of view thingy it's just really about the relationship that you have to your own mind and your own self-understanding. And as long as you keep trying to figure out how aware another person is and how metacognitively developed another person is, as long as you still have like your own immaturity with that topic, because you're looking through the world with kind of judgmental eyes and trying to categorize other people in terms of how aware they are and how emotionally mature they are, and do they really know what ego dissolution is, and have they understood the occult or depth psychology. And a lot of philosophical people judge others by their own, let's say, spiritual attainments or philosophical understandings, and this kind of removes you from the most important layer of what it actually means to connect with another human. And it's not meta at all. It is very direct and immediate, to just be present and listen, to be okay with this person, and be in silence with, whatever is going on. Silence is the cornerstone of emotional maturity, and it's the cornerstone of awakening. And the reason for this is that in silence, you'll find your own peace. And in silence, you'll find unreactivity to impulses, unreactivity to emotions, just complete presence with whatever is the case. And then to know how to act from this stance is where you can actually change whatever is going on and have an influence over your life and other people. And you will reflect or almost infect other people with your own maturity in that way. Like, even if it is unintentional, you will kind of function as a role model, because people oftentimes do not understand what it is possible to perceive. Like, they do not understand that they do not have to react to certain emotions, that they don't have to react when you're getting kind of triggered. And people can feel it, like it's almost a vibe that you give in the room. If somebody's kind of a bit grumpy or tries to trigger you, tries to insult you, and you just don't react at all, or you make a funny comment about it, like you always take everything lighthearted. And through this lighthearted energy, people see that they can't really touch you, they can't really hurt you. And there's a deep satisfaction of moving through the world this way, because you feel sovereign in yourself, and you feel you're just content expressing yourself for you are, while also being able to cause change where change is needed. So there you have the childlike expression that you were born with, but also the maturity to know when to act on your feelings.